show you how to use the 8-inch log cabin trim tool. And it's probably the most popular size, but there are other sizes I'll show you as well. So this one makes 8-inch finished blocks, and they begin with a 2-inch finished square. It's cut 2.5 inches. And then you cut all your strips and get ready to go. And I have my strips here all laid out in the correct sizes. I'll talk to a little bit more about that later. But they're all ready to go, so I can pick up the sizes that I need. So when I get started on this, I'm going to take my 2-inch square. It's the only thing that needs to be cut the exact size in this block. And then the strips that you cut around it can be different lengths and different widths because you're going to trim this up. So when you start out with your square, sew a background strip on one side, press your seam open, and then sew another one on the other side. And after you do that, you will sew a print strip on one side, and then you will sew this one over here, and it will actually be a little longer. That'll go in there. Sew that on, press it, sew that on, press it. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to go clockwise as you sew your strips on. So I'll sew this one, then I'm going to turn it and sew that and go on around and so forth. So after you sew one of those, it will look like this. All right, so I'm going to take my log cabin trim tool, and it has 3 rounds of center blocks in here. And so I'm going to start out with round 1 right here, if you can see that. I'm going to place round 1 square right on the center square of the log cabin block. And I'm going to hold my ruler down and trim both sides. Right, and then I will turn my mat and turn this around and put that round 1 square on there again. The reason I turn it around is so I can cut this way. And trim that off. And then my block is ready to go to put on round 2 of the strips. The reason we do it this method, instead of cutting your strips the exact size, is so that you can trim them off, because they're never going to turn out the right size anyway. And so you might as well just make them a little oversized and trim them up. So after that is done, and I want to show you one more here, how even they can be longer. It doesn't matter, because you're going to put this on here and trim it up. So if your strips are a little long, that's fine too. Okay, you're going to repeat that whole process with the background square on this side, and then we're going to finish it up by putting 2 more print squares on there, which will look like this one here. Okay, 2 more print squares. This is going to be trimmed up again. So this time I'm going to go to round 2 on the ruler. I'm going to put round 2 right there. Trim up these 2 sides. Turn this around, or you could turn your block around if you wanted to. Put round 2 on the center square again. Like that. Try not to let your ruler slip. And then you have another another unfinished block for you to add more rounds to. So then we're going to go all the way up to round 3 of the block. So I've put on 2 more background, 2 more print strips. Go to round 3 on the ruler, like that. If it turns out that your lines on your ruler don't match up exactly with the square that you happen to have on that particular block, don't worry about it. Just kind of center it. Make sure that you've got your room to trim all the way around. Have it centered as close as you can. Make it as straight as you can, and then go with it. So we're going to trim this up, and this time we're going to trim on all 4 sides of the ruler. You don't need to turn the ruler around, because the ruler is 8.5 inches, and that's what you want your block to be. there we go. Okay, so then you have your 8-inch finished or unfinished block, 8.5-inch unfinished, ready to put into your quilt. The log cabin trim tool comes with a really nice set of instructions, and it will get you through all the steps detailed, and so you'll know exactly what to do. The instructions do tell you that you don't have to cut them a certain length or a certain width. They have suggestions for that. And so what I have done is cut all my strips up to the right length, and the width in here calls for possibly 1 3/4 inch strips here. So, a couple things to tell you. I have written a pattern with the using this particular size and technique and everything. The pattern has 2 sets of instructions in it. One for cutting them the exact way for anybody that just doesn't want to get the ruler and wants to do it the traditional way. But if you do want to use the log cabin trim tool ruler, I've given you cutting measurements to cut them so that when you lay them on here, they're pretty close, instead of having lots of extra fabric to cut off or having extra strips going on in the back, because that can make a quilt have a little more weight to it that you might not want. But these instructions can be very helpful for that. Otherwise, just follow the directions in your instruction sheet and hang on to that, because it's part of the ruler. So I'm making my block here with some reproduction prints. It's going to be a very beautiful quilt with this warm colored background on it. It's a solid background. You can do other colorways, just probably any combination of fabrics that you want. If you like the fabric, it'll probably work well. So there's a blue one here. I've done this one, which is some pastels and very soft colors. Okay, another thing you can do with this very same ruler is make courthouse step blocks. So that would be like this. So you would sew on your 2 backgrounds on opposite sides, 2 prints, backgrounds, prints, and you would square it up the same way using the round 1, 2, and 3 on the ruler, and finish it up for your 8-inch block. Here's another one that I've done. Not quite so clear to see as that, because I've used scrappy backgrounds, but it's still a fun way to do it. You do not have to use a solid print for the background. Okay, there's no specific pattern you have to use for this tool. You could just buy this tool and make your blocks up and then put them together any way you want to. So there's a lot of books out there that can give you ideas, or maybe you don't even need a book for that, but there are many, many ways you can put your blocks together. So in this book, Log Cabin ABCs by Marty Michelle, she has some different ways you could lay out your blocks. So this would be taking these same blocks here, log cabin blocks, and laying them out in a lot of different ways. Now, the book might not have the same technique with the oversized strips cut and with the larger center. Some of them have very small centers in them. And an interesting note on that is the center of the quilt is called the heart, because this is a log cabin, so it's like a house, right? So the heart of the home is the center. And sometimes they're just small like this. And so the log cabin trim tool is designed for the larger squares. Some other suggestions for laying them out would be in books like this, and there are literally dozens and dozens of ways you can lay them out. You know, and they have different names to them, but you can take these very same blocks. Quilt like this looks very difficult, but all you do is make your blocks, as many as it says, whether it's 40, 80, 100 of them, and then lay them out, and it's the way you lay them that forms these designs. So all these quilts on this page, these pages here, were made with the same blocks, and then make the blocks over and over, and then it's just the way you lay them out. And the possibilities are endless on what you can do with it. Okay, and then there's other books are maybe helpful for inspiration. If you want to use the log cabin trim tool, but the book doesn't lend itself to that, maybe there's some ideas in a book and you think, oh, I like the way that looks, so I can use my log cabin trim tool and kind of put it together the way I want to. And then another one, Log Cabin Quilts, is designed to use the 6-inch log cabin trim tools. So in addition to giving you quilt ideas in here, she also has step-by-step instructions, just like what I've just showed you, but goes through it with the photos and showing you how to piece together your block and trim it up.